All right, peeps, we're rolling. We are rolling again. See how long this one is. Might be a shorter episode because it's a little bit late, but and I didn't get a lot of questions at first. But however, I did have a lot of topics I wanted to address anyway, so it's kind of a blessing in disguise. Let me just as usual get this stuff rolling on Twitter so I can make sure all you peeps see it because we're still building a YouTube channel and moving all you people from Twitter to YouTube. So a couple different topics here to address. Only got 2 questions this week, so that's cool. So we're going to go into all these different things. But first things first, we have the wine. Okay, we got the wine. Let me just do this one more time. All right, cool. So I like to, with the wine, I like to use a brand to do a comparison. We're doing Greece now. We've moved into Greece, and since it's a hot summer day, we're going to be doing some Greek whites. So we have Rhoditis, Assyrtiko, Moschfolero, and Retsina. And from my understanding, most of these are all from the Peloponnesian Peninsula, basically. The Assyrtiko is from an area called Patra, but overall, it's all Peloponnese, which is, I wouldn't say the only location in Greece at all where they produce wine. They produce wine all over Greece, including in many of the islands. And a lot of these grapes actually came from the islands. But we're not going to get too granular because when you get to a country like Greece with all these different varietals, a lot of these varietals are really, simply put, they're indigenous varietals and they don't really get export outside the country. And very often they are good for growing in the location, but they're not necessarily like exciting. Now, the biggest exception with that is going to be Assyrtiko, which has a really, really good reputation. Moschfolero is starting to go up in reputation too. It's a little bit more perfumed, like a muscat, but Assyrtiko is known to be able to keep a lot of acidity in spite of the fact that it's very, very hot in Greece. And that's important because when you're in a hot climate like Greece, you have tons and tons of sun. You need to have varietals that are able to maintain acidity, which often is going to be there when you have less ripe situations. So we're going to go into these different ones. The first one we are going to examine is the Rhoditis. Now, Rhoditis was normally done as a field blend. Rhoditis is a really, really basic white. I guess the way that I would describe it is, from what I've researched, I'm doing this for myself as much as you guys because I haven't done a tasting of different Greek wines before, but it seems like a much more table wine, basic Greek white compared to the Assyrtiko, which is a little bit more of an elevated one. So let's try it out. On the nose, bright lemons, acidity. A little bit of almost a sweet flavor on the profile, but it's got the flavor you get when a white wine is not really good and kind of it's refreshing, but it has like a long aftertaste, kind of like an apple-y, like an apple juice kind of aftertaste. And it's not a good thing. The front of it's really nice, but the finish, it just kind of collapses. And it's what you'd expect. I'm not saying this is a bad thing for the price point. This is not, I'm going to emphasize, it's not an expensive wine. Okay, it's wine, if I recall, was probably around $10. It's been a while since I bought it. Let's try the Assyrtiko because I'm really interested in seeing these two side by side because they're ostensibly the most similar. And we're just going to take a look at it here. Okay. So actually, exactly as expected, based on my research, the Assyrtiko is like the Rhoditis, but better. So while the Rhoditis has that collapse on the finish, that reveals it's just sort of cheap and basic. And by the way, just want to point out something right here. Look at this. You see these corks? Okay. 3 of the wines had the plastic cork. Only the Assyrtiko had a real one. All the same company, right? So they obviously know that the Assyrtiko is the one that's actually... all the corks are falling on the ground now. They're the ones, they know that's the really good one. So yeah, it has the same bright acidity as the Roditis, but the finish is clean. It's structured better. And that's why, unless you're directly trying to get a Greek wine like Roditis, you're not going to see that at a restaurant. You're always going to see Assyrtiko and the next one, Moschfalero, which has become much more popular in recent years. Now, you look at these wines, all of them have a kind of light lemon kind of color, but this one is actually even clearer, even more watery looking. So let's try this out. So yeah, the Muscat nose, a lot of grape on the nose with this one. But not so much on the palate. It's actually very clean on the palate. Really like it. I think it's more refreshing than the Assyrtiko. Doesn't have a collapse at the end. So just to go back between the Assyrtiko and the Moschfalero. Assyrtiko, tons of lemons. Really bright lemon on the front. It's got a biting acidity in a good way. Really refreshing acidity. Moschfalero doesn't have as much acid, and there's more of grape on the nose, but it's a little bit more refreshing. So these two, very interesting. Now the Retsina. Now this is going to be really, really interesting. So I'm gonna do a little mini digression here. It's going to take 2 seconds. I know a lot of you guys, some of you guys love the wine, some of you guys love the dating content more, some of you guys love both, right? Some of you guys love both. It's so funny. It'll tell me sometimes that my tweet was deleted. I don't get that. I'm trying to retweet it again. So historically with wine, just real quickly, wine would oxidize and it would taste nasty. Okay, they didn't have ways to preserve it. They didn't have corks. So all the big wine festivals happened in the fall and in the spring. So you had the first press of wine in the fall, and then you'd have maybe a release in the spring. That's Beaujolais Nouveau, for instance, is predicated on that old tradition of basically you have the initial, it's good, it's bottled initially after press, and you're supposed to drink it by the spring. In the summertime, in particular, when the heat came, and as just the months would go on from the press, the wine would oxidize, right? And it would start to taste rancid. It wouldn't taste good. So what they would do historically is they would put all sorts of shit in the wine. Unless it was a really nice wine that had a lot of acidity and a lot of sugar that could preserve it, it would start to collapse. So they would put stuff like tar and various resins. And in the case of Retsina, pine needles. Now, this is a modern wine. It's an old school tradition, though. And it's a blend of, maybe sometimes have Assyrtiko or Roditis in it, but it also has a very basic wine, which they would never put as a varietal on the bottle, called Salvatiano. And so basically it's a blend, Retsina. It's an individual. Wow. Whew. I'm going to tell you about this in a second. It's not a regular wine. It smells like pine needles. It smells very stinky because it is wine that has pine needles in it. Okay. It was, I don't know if it was fermented with pine needles. It's a very local tradition, which of course in the modern era is losing popularity because people want clean wines like the Assyrtiko and the Moschfalero. See, I like it. I like it. I like it. Now, I will say, would I want to drink a bottle of it? Probably not. It's a really fun glass. But you could see that this would get tiring for people. But this is how, like, if you were to go to, Village Bar and you ask for a bottle of a local wine, it's probably going to be a Retsina. That was traditionally what they would do, up in the mountains at least. So very interesting stuff. Anyway, guys, I'll just show you the wine one more time, and we are going to move on. And just also to show you, this is Peloponnese, right? You guys should know some basic Greek geography, but this is Peloponnese. Okay. There's a lot of Greek stuff, and we're just getting started with Greece. We got a lot of reds. We got other white tastings. We got a lot of fun stuff lined up. All right. Let's start to go into the topics here. So the first one I'm going to go into is about weak men, toxic women. Now, I made this tweet today, and it was based off of a Reddit post, or Reddit, relationship Reddit, which, by the way, the Reddit relationship section is probably some of the most pathetic, horrible stories that you ever hear, right? And it's not even clear to what extent these stories are real. It really isn't clear to what extent these stories are real. I mean, I'm very often of the perspective that creative writers will go on here and just try to make stuff up to troll and test to see how persuasive they can be. But at the same time, people really are messes today. I think we know that. There's a lot of terrible relationships, and a lot of people are just really damaged and pathetic. And so I'm not trying to be judgmental. I'm just trying to really state a fact that the state of modern relationships is horrendous. Okay, it's horrendous. It's why people like me have a job. It's why I have a successful business. And honestly, I kind of wish I didn't have a successful business, in the sense that this shouldn't be such a big problem, but it is a big problem. Okay, so basically, the story, and I'm going to summarize it. This guy had a toy dinosaur, and his grandfather gave it to him, and his grandfather was very precious to him, and he played with this dinosaur as a kid, and he keeps it on a shelf, and it's like a memento of sorts. Okay, so he gets into a fight with his wife, and she's malicious, laughs about it, throws it out, and he starts crying. He's super upset. Okay, now where to start? Okay, this is a toxic woman. She's a toxic woman because she's actually, that's malice. She's taking pleasure in the fact that she threw away something that was very important to him. Okay, and we can judge, and somewhat rightly, maybe we can judge to what extent it was important to him. I actually am not so concerned about the fact that that toy dinosaur was important to him, because it was maybe the one thing that tied him to his grandfather. That's not the vector that I would criticize him. I would criticize his weakness by the fact that he was so emotionally attached to it that he's crying nonstop, and his kid has to comfort him, his 8-year-old kid. I mean, it's pathetic. That's pathetic. But what's the situation here, and why is it relevant? Well, their story isn't relevant, but what's relevant here is this dynamic of weak men and toxic women being together. Now, why is that the case? Does anybody here know? Anybody watching? We got a bunch of people here watching. Does anybody here know why that's the case? Why is it that weak men and toxic women are together? Weak men don't have boundaries. And so because they don't have boundaries, they let toxic women come in, because they would rather be with someone like that than be alone. And the toxic woman isn't able to find somebody else because a guy with strong boundaries isn't going to tolerate that. So she's looking for some place to go, and she has contempt for the guy for being weak. Yeah, as you guys said, Ben, only ones who can tolerate each other. John, they attract each other. Exactly. They are opposites. They're two sides of the same coin. This is really, really important. And so the reason I mention this, because in some ways this is a very banal thing to bring up, but when we talk about the red pill and the blue pill, you talk about what kind of women you get. Well, you get a lot of these blue pill guys who have now recently become red pilled. They're super upset. They're super pissed about women. Well, no, you were attracting toxic women, because let's be honest here. You were maybe a weak person. Okay, you were a weak guy, and of course you were abused because you allowed yourself to be abused over all these years. The reason to bring it up is that not all women are like that. Okay, all women are like that. Well, in some ways, all women are like that. Not all women are like that. Not all women are manipulative. Not all women are abusive. They're not. They're not. And this guy, if he's going to cry over a dinosaur being thrown out, he is like, no wonder she has that kind of contempt for him. Not saying what she did was right. I think what she did was actually completely disgusting, but it's kind of like ridiculous to even talk about it. So look, if you don't want a toxic woman in your life, the first thing that you should do is stop being a weak man. Not just talking about the gym, talking about mentally, spiritually, emotionally, understand what matters, understand your boundaries, which is a good segue into the next topic I'm going to hit up. And I'm going to read this one. That's why if you guys on Twitter know that I retweeted a bunch of this stuff beforehand, it was for you guys to know, but I also wanted to be able to read this stuff. All right, 1 second. Okay, I tweeted this a couple days ago. I'll take a little sip here. We'll take a little sip. More relationship issues than we care to admit comes from a man refusing to embrace his purpose. Okay? I want you guys to sit on that for a moment here. More relationship issues than we care to admit comes from a man refusing to embrace his purpose. This is so fucking big. It's so fucking big, and I'm going to tell you why. You see a lot of relationships today that the guy and the girl get into fights over stupid stuff. Oh, she didn't do this. She didn't do that. She doesn't, the guy feels like she doesn't care about him. The girl feels like, not really loved or appreciated. And look, all these things, like, you have to do relationship management. There's no doubt about that. You have to know how to treat the opposite sex. But, and I was talking to this with a client the other day. You will get pissed off at your girl you will get pissed off at your girl if you do not have a purpose in life / have not embraced your purpose in life. And the reason you get pissed off at her is projection. Because even if you have read all the sort of red pill mantras and that say, oh, well, as a man, you can't, you can't make a woman your mission. Well, fine, but what is your mission? I'm gonna just go make money. Well, for a lot of guys, that doesn't really cut it. Doesn't really cut it, does it? Making money doesn't cut it for a lot of guys as a mission. Whereas, if you were in your work, if you were leaning into that as a man, you would not care so much about little things your woman did. Now, let's be clear about this here for a second, because this is the paradox. You have to be intelligent, okay? I'm expecting you guys to be intelligent here and not get triggered by that. If you are on your mission, you're not going to focus on little bullshit. And as a result of that, neither is your woman. She is going to see that you're on this big thing, and naturally she is going to want to support you. Assuming, you guys have a good connection, assuming, baseline attractiveness, etc. But guys will get pissed off at their woman unconsciously, even if they know that they shouldn't make their woman their mission. They will get pissed off at their woman unconsciously if they are leaning out of their bigger purpose, because all of their energy should be focused on penetrating that edge. And the women sense that. Now, I'm not saying that the edge, there aren't edges within the relationship as well that you can penetrate. But fundamentally, a man without a mission does not have the internal validation he needs. I'm going to expand more upon this from the same conversation with that client. He was talking about stuff like, oh, he's a very social guy, but he was feeling a little bit, his girlfriend was maybe showing him up now. His girlfriend, who had been very shy, was now like very engaged in their social circle, and he felt a little bit like, maybe he wasn't as much of the star as he used to be. I was like, well, you know what? You wouldn't care about that man if you had been not compromising yourself and work, which he was doing. Because why would you care about being the star in your social group? If you were on your purpose, the people in the social group are naturally going to gravitate towards you. The guys, look, I'm not saying that there's one single archetype here. You could be really extroverted, you could be introverted. It does not matter. Okay, it does not matter. But the Godfather wasn't, a loudmouth. The Godfather wasn't somebody who wasn't out running his mouth. And there is a trend with guys. The more you talk, the more you feel the need to be the center of attention, the less strong you actually are. So I think for a lot of guys, now I will make this point that a lot of guys are on their mission, but they don't entertain the relationship at all. They don't care about the relationship, or they don't act as if they care about the relationship. And that's a problem. That'll create relationship issues. But if you cherish your woman and you have a purpose, chances of relationship issues, like beyond like minor spats, is pretty low, because you are not going to care about a lot of stupid stuff. And that's what a man should do. A man should not be petty. You could say that petty is a womanly trait, pettiness. And I think that that's correct. But to give respect to women, it's a low woman trait. But as a man, if you're embodying low women traits, then you're completely depolarized. So, stuff to chew on. All right. Let's do the next point here. Got a couple more things to go through. Just going to retweet this again. Just keep retweeting it. Keep retweeting it. It's all about the retweet. Just so it stays at the top of people's timeline. All right. So, where should we go from there? What's the next one we should go through? I think I'm going to go through the one we talked about, femininity and the distortion here. We just talked about the distortion. Well, we'll read this tweet. This is in response to Goldman, who's amazing. If you guys don't know about Goldman, Goldman's been evolving. So, man, that red scene is crazy. Goldman's been evolving. So if you are one of the people who still looks at him solely as a dating guru, I think that you will be mistaken to pigeonhole him like that. He's been on a massive spiritual journey, and these are the people you want to follow. Okay, so Goldman Unleashed, at Shaman of the on Twitter. I'm going to read what I responded to. So he said, girls who want to live in the big city during the prime of their life in order to experience the nightlife, foodie scene, unlimited sex, dating, and corporate culture are so passé. The Sex and the City lies don't even exist anymore. Daughters of the earth, rise up. And I responded, better to trigger these dissonant women by asserting their disconnect from the earth than to try to oblige them to some housewife role. Everything in female nature comes down from nature. The integrated women are forged from the wild. Okay. I'm going through that. I mentioned this, and I think this will upset some guys, because a lot of guys are of the perspective that you want the woman she just needs to be a good housewife, and she needs to, submit and all this stuff. I am honestly not of that perspective. Although, of course, I would prefer to the kind of feral nature we have today. There is at least some structure around those women, but I don't think a woman needs to choose that on her own. Okay? Because we have to, if we're on a higher consciousness level, we want that to be something that she wants. Now, we could be talking semantics here. Maybe some guys are saying, well, of course, I want a woman who wants that. But the point of all this stuff is that if you go to a woman today and you say, oh, you're just some sort of corporate girl and you should be, you should be in the kitchen. Well, that's stupid. It's a stupid fucking comment. I mean, you could be doing it just to trigger for shock value, and that's fine. It's a tactic. You may have a bigger agenda than that woman. But what I'm trying to say here with it is that you're not going to really persuade anybody. Not going to persuade anybody. And what you're actually doing is you are basically telling the girl to trade one master for another. Now, I'm not going to say that I think that the woman having a corporate master is a better thing than having a husband, so to speak, in that role. But I think that both of these things are dichotomies that we need, the paradigms we need to move past, right? We need to move past them. We need to move past them. It's just not, they're not going to stand up in the future. Okay. They're not going to stand up in the future. And so we need to think outside the box. If you were to tell one of these corporate girls that they are disconnected from their feminine nature because they have a disconnect from nature and from the environment. I mean, look, people make fun of it, and they're right to, in a certain sense, of the dog moms and girls who are all about nature but have issues with men. Well, this is just like when they have an issue with men, a lot of their issue, these women have an issue with the sort of system, which they think of as a man. I mean, it's very complicated. I don't really know that it's worth going on this tangent too much with it. But the point is that these women are frustrated by the masculine, okay? But no woman's frustrated by the integrated masculine, because the integrated masculine can pace the woman, can meet them emotionally where they're at. Now, the propaganda, of course, tries to divide that. For instance, yours truly, I have already received, and I will continue to get, tons and tons of bullshit from really miserable feminist propagandists who will tell me that I hate women, say I manipulate people. You're a manipulator. No, I'm not a fucking manipulator. I understand manipulation. You're manipulating. Because I understand manipulation, it doesn't mean that I manipulate. You understand? This is gaslighting. When somebody understands that you manipulate, it does not make you a manipulator because you can avoid that manipulation. All right. So the relevant aspect here is that better to trigger these dissonant women by asserting their disconnect from the earth than try to oblige them to some housewife role. If you tell a woman that, what are you doing in this corporate environment? You're so disconnected from your nature. And then she gets defensive and you say, yeah, you're like, and you talk about animals and you talk about being out in nature and you talk about how it's so important for a woman. Well, what's she going to say to that? What's she going to say? If you say, yeah, you should just submit to a man, well, then your ego's coming into the picture. But the reality is an integrated woman will submit to a man. She will surrender to him because he understands and she trusts it. This is Sarah Beth account. I mean, 7 roles, got a whole thing with it. And it's actually good timing that this kind of came out. She mentioned about this, at how she's like a boss bitch. She's a corporate leader. Okay. All the feminists who are watching this stuff, she's a corporate leader. Okay. This is a very successful woman. She surrenders. She submits to her man, him only. And a lot of guys can say like, oh, well, I don't want that. Of course you want that. You want a queen in your corner. You want a strong woman in your corner, but you don't want a bitch in your corner. There's a difference between a strong woman and a bitch. Okay? Very, very different thing. One is integrated, one is not. One understands their masculine and knows when to wield it and knows when to let it go. Go back to a deeper nature. The other is clinging to it because it's a very, very scary thing for her to let it go. And she produces, and then she makes this propaganda and she blames it on you. Okay? So, Kitty Witty, I appreciate it. I appreciate your comments here. Yeah. Women get it. Look, if you're a healthy woman, you're going to listen to this stuff and you're going to be like, I totally get it. And if you're an unhealthy woman, you're going to get pissed off because the truth always triggers people in dissonance. Sorry, you needed somebody to tell you that. I'm happy that I was able to play that role. Healthy people, healthy women understand exactly what I'm talking about to be true. Women are not emotionally happy being in control all the time. But women are also not happy being helpless. And if you can't reconcile those two ideas, you're stupid. Okay? You're stupid. You have to think beyond the dichotomies that are presented to you. If you don't do that, you will remain stupid and you will get caught up in traps by smarter people who are trying to divide you against women, or if you're a woman, divide you against men. It does not work that way in reality. Men and women were made for each other. There is no people who are more together in this world than a husband and a wife. No people. The fact that we have even gotten to the point where we let some propaganda divide that is a really big tell about how far things have fallen. But whatever. Moving on. I think nature is very good for women, in short. Nature is very good for men too. But there's a whole different dynamic that men have with nature than women. But nature integrates. There's no question about it. All right. So, speaking of this stuff. Oh, well, I got two good ones here. But we're going to, since we just talked about feminism, let's move to this comment that Sarah, for the record, I mean, I got nothing against Sarah. I think I don't really know much about her, to be honest. It's the first time I'd seen her account. She's looks like a trad girl. Gen Z, ironic trad girl. I'm not saying that disrespectfully, just saying that there's a niche there for that, and she encompasses it. She made this comment. A lot of guys are looking for girls with high agreeability who haven't succumbed to feminism. At this point, that's pretty much impossible. A woman must be disagreeable to avoid succumbing to feminism. Almost every institution is implicitly egalitarian. You need to be some type of red pilled to reject the sacrament of your culture, being equal versus doing spreadsheets. A properly agreeable woman in America has already been taught women should be disagreeable. Sorry. Okay, she rambles on. I'm going to stick to the main tweet, which is the one that got all the attention. A lot of guys are looking for girls with high agreeability who haven't succumbed to feminism. At this point, that's pretty much impossible. A woman must be disagreeable to avoid succumbing to feminism. Do I agree with this? No, I don't agree with this. However, actually, and I have to be honest here, when it was first brought to my attention, I was kind of like, yeah, that's true. But, as I thought about it more, she's really doing some sidestepping here. So some of you guys remember a big tweet I did a while back. Not tweet. Sorry, what the fuck am I talking about? Not tweet. Did a whole post on Tomi Lahren, right? Now, Tomi Lahren, she's this big conservative commentator. She's an attractive woman, right? And she's super conservative, hates feminists. Well, she is a feminist, though. Actually, in how she acts, she's a feminist. Same goes for Ann Coulter. Same goes for all these girls. So when I look at this tweet by Sarah, what I'm seeing is the same sort of thing, which is that the only woman you're going to get who's against feminism is in disposition a feminist. Whereas the irony here, of course, is that you have a lot of girls today who are, hey, I'm going to raise the flag, I support feminism. But then in practice, they're completely submissive to their guy and really don't have opinions about anything. Now, again, I'm not all about this dichotomy here about you're either very disagreeable or you're super agreeable. I like the integration. I think it's very valuable to have a woman in your corner who will call you out on shit and who is wise enough to give even advice. Oh my God, the manosphere, they're going to lose this. They're going to lose their minds. What? A man is going to women for advice? Yeah, look, hold on a second. Okay? What did all the great men of history do? They went to oracles. Okay? And who were the oracles? Oracles were women. Wow, oracles were women. Unbelievable that a great man, would go to an oracle for wisdom. Okay? You want to have an oracle. You want to be the king and you want to have an oracle in your corner. You want a woman who is going to be able to provide that wisdom. And that, because the thing is, the people you trust, the people who know you best, are the best people to give advice. If you ask some random person for advice, they don't know who you are. And most of the time, they won't even ask you those questions. I mean, by the way, that's a great tell that someone's fucking idiot or doesn't really want to help you, is that, and I've had this on sales calls, by the way, where you're like, okay, I want this and this and this. It's like, well, sorry, I have to ask you a ton of questions first, because if I don't ask you these questions, how am I going to know if I can even help you? How am I going to know that if I can even help you? it's very important to ask questions, but you don't have to ask as many questions if you are married to the person, because you know who they are, you know their blind spots. Everybody has blind spots. Even if they work to go against them, you're never going to be perfect. And so having a good woman in your corner helps with that. All right. So the point here is that you don't really want a highly agreeable or a highly disagreeable woman, because they're both aspects of the sort of low level feminine and the distorted feminine. Okay. They're not integrated. All that said, the issue with this tweet is that it ignores the fact that agreeable women will reject feminism the second that they meet a guy who doesn't believe in it and they're attracted to. I mean, this happens over and over again. Okay. So the issue is not that she's incorrect, but the issue is that the assumption behind her statement, because the assumption is that you want a girl who hasn't succumbed to feminism. All right, guys. Well, you're not going to find one unless she's already disagreeable, unless she's, well, sorry, it doesn't actually really matter, because most women don't have really strongly held opinions. And so if you were to ask that girl, are you a feminist? She might say, oh, yeah, I am a feminist. Yeah, I support it, because she thinks that you support it. And then you say you don't support it. And then she's like, yeah, I agree with you. You know, it's like, that's the first thing. The second thing is that, and then even on the basis of her tweet, it's not even entirely true, because there's a lot of agreeable girls who agree with their dad. Okay, they're daddy's girls. They agree with their dad. And if their dad doesn't agree with it, then they may not be disagreeable, but they agree with him. And then they'll agree with you. So it's not really correct. But what she's trying to say fundamentally is that agreeable girls are not going to speak up against feminism. And of course, because they're not usually loudmouths, because they don't really care that much. What they're looking for is to connect with a guy. So it's misleading. Okay, it's a misleading tweet. And yeah, that's that. All right. We got one more. And Kitty, thank you for the compliment. You know, it takes a lot of inner work to understand it. It takes work. I'm trying to get these guys to stop thinking in black and white here. All right. If you want to hurt someone, target their shame. If you want to heal someone, do the same. I don't have to really linger too much on this one, because it's actually relatively self-explanatory. But I do want to just make a single comment on it, which is that, look at this, they're telling me I delete the tweet again. They do this stuff all the time. They're always trolling me a little bit here. Okay. If you want to impact somebody, you have to hit them where they're weak. So I've mentioned this before on YouTube videos, black magic and white magic. A lot of game is based around understanding where most women are traumatized and pushing on that trauma. And when you push on that trauma, then you can get what you want from the girl. That's manipulation. Again, because I understand that doesn't mean that I'm manipulative. Because I understand manipulation, because I know how to manipulate a woman, it doesn't mean I will manipulate her. All right? There is no virtue in ignorance. There is no virtue in ignorance. If you do not want to be a dark individual, if you do not want to do evil things, if you don't want to hurt people, then you may have to go through it a little bit yourself. You may have to do a couple of things just to learn, but you have to understand how it works. You have to go through it. And yeah, you probably have had to experience it. Okay, I've been manipulated. And in the past, I have manipulated a bit. And you only do that even if you don't really want to manipulate, because you have unmet needs and you don't know yourself. So everything is about, okay, all the shadow work, you have to know yourself. And you only know yourself by seeing the worst stuff. So, to the point, when you understand where someone's ashamed, and shame is a very, very low level emotion. It's a very low vibration emotion. I'm not criticizing, I'm not judging it. It's a very low level, low vibration emotion. Okay, so why does that matter? It means it can draw out a lot of negative behavior. So if a woman is ashamed of something, well, what you can do to her is you could hurt her with that. And because I'm able to see people, I can be extremely mean. And I've done it. I've done it, and I'm not proud of it. I'm really not proud of it, because you get a sense of power, and that's the black feeling, the black magic feeling. But when you do that, it's about you. You didn't actually make that person's life better. Now, in a relationship, this is the thing, and a lot of people talk about dread game. Dread game is pushing on a woman's trauma. Now, you may have to push on her trauma a little bit just to get her to become aware of it. But what you do at that point is everything, because you could use that trauma and you could say, why do you do this? Why do you respond when I do this? If I don't want to do this to you, so why is this what you respond to? And you actually start to heal it. Very often what will happen is a girl will start crying. She'll have like a breakdown, and you can really start to get to the heart of an issue. And then you can heal, and then you can have a relationship that's actually based on love, and the sex is great and there's a lot of connection. But a lot of guys think, oh, the only way to get a woman to respond to you is basically black magic. It's basically find out where she's hurt and, game her a little bit there, manipulate her a little bit there. Because when you trigger her trauma, then she goes after you, she chases you. Well, you can do that stuff, sure, but is that what you want to do? That's a question only you can ask yourself. But the point here, relevant to the tweet, is that it's all about shame at the end of the day. It's all about these low-level emotions. What triggers you, anything that triggers you, you can either use to cause damage or you can cause the heal. Let's look at that on a societal level right now. Everything that's been done to you, everything that happens to you can be alchemized into something much greater. It's up to you. It's your choice. It's your choice as a man in a relationship. It's your choice in general in life, how you want to alchemize your experiences. Anyway, now I have 2 questions. We're going to hit these questions, and then we're going to sign off. So we got 2 more questions here. Unless any of you guys watching want to drop anything in the chat, I'll answer anything you drop in the chat. And Ben, totally correct. You got to think of what a girl's already doing to earn a guy like you, not try to forcing her to measure up to what you want. So, Kitty Witty, yeah. So, the question: has a woman ever broken your heart? I broke up with my ex when he was already low. After I left him, he spiraled downward more so. How do I apologize? I want to set him free. Well, I don't know the details about how you did it or why you broke up with him. If you broke up with him when he was low and it was like a selfish act, like the relationship was good before, but something happened to him, and look, maybe you were at a low level feminine, and the reality is that women who are at a low level feminine, which by the way, stages in a journey, but when they're in a low level feminine, they can't hold form themselves, and so they will not be able to stay with a guy who has issues. A woman actually in her distorted masculine will stay with a weak guy longer, which is why you see a lot of modern relationships have weak men and these kind of strong women who can often become toxic. Okay. Because they can actually hold down the fort a little bit. They can deal with it to a greater degree than a woman who has no sense of self. She needs to jump on to another guy. Branch swinging is very popular with that. I'm not suggesting you did that, but you broke up with him when he was already low. He spiraled downward more so. I don't know that you need to apologize to him. I say I don't know because I actually don't know. And some of the guys watching this might be triggered by that statement because they think that women always need to apologize to men and the pain that they cause, blah, blah, blah. But I think that there's a chance, based on how you're characterizing this, that if you were to go and reach out to him, that you actually might If he's already in this low place, then he will just jump back onto you. He'll throw a bunch of venom at you, maybe, or he'll cling to you and want to get back together with you, and then you'll have to leave him again. That'll hurt him again. So, look, it's his choice to spiral downward. When a woman breaks up with you, a woman breaking up with a man is a gift. Because when a woman breaks a man, men are all about forming. They're all about form. They're all about structure. And so when a woman breaks a man, it allows him to reform stronger. It gives him an opportunity to reconfigure himself in a way that would be difficult on his own unless he's integrated. Integrated guys can constantly restructure themselves, and that's why they have to go to the feminine to learn how to release things, okay? But for most men who are in the low-level masculine, they need a woman to at least open that door. That's the anima dynamic that Jung talks about, that we seek that sort of that sort of integration through the opposite. So, relevant point of this is that it was his choice to go that direction. And it's not your responsibility to save him. And you don't want to save him. And by putting yourself in the situation where it could be worse. You can give more context if you want, but if you broke up with him, let him go. It's his life. And yeah, a woman has broken my heart. I've had my heart broken twice before. And they were massive gifts to me. I'm super grateful for those opportunities because my ex-girlfriends, especially my last ex-girlfriend, if it wasn't for her, I would not be able to do what I do today. It was because of her that I was able to understand so much more. So yeah, it's a gift. All right, questions here. Hey, Pat, figured I'd give you an update with Gym Girl. This is a former question. Since your advice has been spot on so far, we are now following each other on Instagram. She doesn't have any pictures with any guys, though. Nor have I seen the guy she used to come in with lately. Kind of thinking she may be single, actually. The energy between us has been very positive. How would you play this? She's got photos of her playing golf, which I also like to play. Is that a good idea as a way to hang or to friend zone? Well, actually, I think in this situation, tactically playing into the friend zone is good because I don't think that she's going to be responsive quite yet to direct approach. This is a lot of guys. I've had this sort of conversation before with guys, and I think it's really funny. But there's a lot of guys who are like, a lot of the manosphere absolutely loves to talk about how if you're masculine, you're going to get a girl. Well, yes, maybe, probably, yeah. But again, distorted masculine. And also this sort of stuff that men do to show that they're masculine to each other doesn't attract women. Okay. It's the same thing when you have a bunch of girls who are like laughing about kittens and babies, or stupider shit. Because kittens and babies aren't stupid, but I mean stupider shit like cartoons or, the point here is just simply to say that is feminine, but it's not necessarily attractive to a guy. It's not game. Game is not, okay? Simply being masculine or feminine. Those are different things, which is why there's an element of a girl game, which is going to be like, I'm really interested in what this guy's interested in. So she's going to pretend to be interested in stuff that you care about. Now, she actually may enjoy it because she enjoys the response from you. She enjoys the connection with you. That's game, right? That's game right there. So her, yeah, I mean, I just find this stuff so funny. How girls will be like suddenly interested in everything a guy's interested in. I have one client and super like, I mean, I'll just be blunt. He wouldn't be offended by this. Super tech dork guy. And also like interested in all sorts of mechanical stuff too. And his girlfriend is wants to be around him with that stuff and is interested and is trying to do all this, now trying to like do her artwork around him. And, she's doing that not because she finds that stuff interesting, but because she wants to connect with him, right? She wants to connect with him. And guys do the same stuff, all right? A lot of guy game revolves around the flattery of the female ego, which involves being able to connect with a woman on a feminine level, which is why a lot of seducers can actually almost seem to masculine guys, the hardcore masculine guys, as being almost a little flamboyant, right? Because, look at what's his face? Johnny Depp, right? Johnny Depp, that's not like he's never in the Pirates of the Caribbean and stuff. He's never playing like a super masculine character. He's like this sort of artist, right? There's a slinkiness to him. Well, women like that stuff in these guys because plane flying overhead. Because that sort of behavior ends up ultimately bringing out their own feminine. So this is a whole other topic. We don't have to go too much into it. But the point here is that I would make an offhand comment about, when you see her at the gym and you guys are just doing your regular chit chat about golfing, and wait for her bait to see how she responds to that. She's probably going to take the bait. She's probably going to say, "Oh, you golf, everything." It's like, yeah, blah, blah. If you want to, you can reveal your hand and so that you've seen it. I mean, I don't know the details enough to say one way or another if you should reveal that aspect, that that. If you've been on her Instagram and you've been talking on Instagram, then it's probably pretty obvious and it would seem stupid to pretend not to. But you could still just talk about the fact that you're going golfing. See what she puts forward if she golfs herself. And then you can say, "Oh, where are you going? Right? Where do you go to golf?" And she'll say, "Oh, I go to this place." Like, either you've been there regularly or you've never checked it out. And both of those vectors are ways like, let's go. Like when you usually go, we should hit a couple rounds together. And so then you could actually go and do that. And you could kind of go on a date with her without making it a date. And a lot of guys will be like, "Well, just be direct." But everything has a context. I'm all about direct approach. And sometimes it's better to be a little bit more indirect because this guy's already put some direct fillers out there and she balked. So she may not be ready for a direct approach. She may be more comfortable with this, and it protects this guy more. He gets the same outcome. All that matters is that once the energy builds, that you're direct then. That's what matters, is that you're out together and you're doing golfing because you got there this indirect way and the energy's there, that you make a move. That's what matters. That's when you get friend zoned or you don't get friend zoned. But all the means of introduction, indirect, is totally fine. It's totally fine. There's no shame in that. Only issue with indirect approaching is when you refuse to move forward because you're being so indirect that you actually are afraid to make a move. Totally different thing here. This is tactical, not strategic. Strategically, you're always direct because you're going after the girl. But tactically, there's a lot of different things that you're going to do on the field. All right, we got a question here from Hank, and then we got one more I got to address on the Periscope, and I do need to pull out pretty soon. I think I might see myself in here because dinner is coming up. All right. So, Hank, a woman who I was courting and ended things with on a positive note a month ago just FaceTimed this morning. It was long distance in the context of arranged marriage. Okay. I didn't pick up because it was 10 a.m. Eastern, and she was in London time. Because of her aloofness and authenticity, I sort of parked things on a friendly note, and she became warm on Instagram after that. How to proceed? I called her instead of texting if she butt called me, but she didn't pick up. Just curious, not really into her. Also, she unfollowed on Instagram a week ago when I didn't give her attention. Hank, honestly, I would just not even engage with it at all. Maybe she butt dialed you. I don't really No, but if she's so neurotic that she's going to unfollow you on Instagram and you don't give her attention, there is no way this is going anywhere. Okay, I'm gonna be very direct about this. There is no way this girl are gonna go anywhere because it was long distance, arranged marriage. It was cut off. She is looking for your attention, and nothing's gonna come of it. So don't give it to her. This is just like a very important thing to understand. As a man, do not give women who are looking for attention without any ROI, any of it. Cut them off, block the number. She unfollowed you on Instagram because you didn't respond. That is super neurotic stuff because she's like, oh, I move forward. Oh, he doesn't like me. She's playing games in her own head. Just get away from it. Move on. Better stuff here. And Tony, I appreciate that. Tony Bruno is the man. And look, if you guys like this, literally an hour and a half from now, I'm going on Tony's stream. We're doing some serious stuff tonight. We're going into all the integrated masculine and feminine dynamics. We're talking about energy. Every time I go on Tony, it's big stuff, but Tony's show, that's big stuff. But this is really, really big. This is really, really big. So I'm excited for this show, and check out for it on Twitter and check it out for it on YouTube. Subscribe to Tony's stream because Tony is like an incredible interviewer, and Tony brings on a lot of diverse perspectives in the manosphere about stuff and, you know, about red pill, etc. And he's really on like the tip of the spear when it comes to the sort of consciousness of men. So if this stuff interests you, I really, really recommend that. If you haven't already, subscribe to Tony's stuff, but that you do it and then you check out her show in the next, like, literally hour and a half. Got one more question here. Kitty, by the way, thank you. I think everybody who's really got to the higher level understands, you know, manipulation and seduction. It's just, can't always turn it off. I understand. Yeah, it's sometimes with me too. But it's all about our intention at the end of the day and what we try to do. So, last question. In your experience, intuition, what sort of impact can a mother's death have on a young man's romantic relationships going forward? I lost my mother at age 13. I would say I was somewhat coddled by her, might classify myself as a mama's boy. I actually think in some sense losing her was good for me as it accelerated my growth as an individual, but it was long and complicated, often avoiding grieving process. I'm 28 now. Any particular pitfalls you think I should watch out for with dating relationships? Thanks for all you do. Well, I am really so sorry to hear that, man. I mean, mothers are precious. There's really nothing like a mother. There's nothing like a mother. I'm a very involved father, but with my daughter, you can see it with a baby. There is nothing like a mother. And I feel for you, man. I'm sorry. I know it's been a long time, but it doesn't mean that the pain ever completely goes away because obviously you were very close to her. You have a lot of memories with her. So, I think in the context of this, that you had a very close relationship with your mother and she was lost. I mean, obviously there's trauma that results from that, but I think it's good that you had it. The issues really come up when a man either does not have any of that love from a mother or has a toxic dynamic. Like I have one client, actually I've had many clients who have had mothers who have borderline personality disorder. Okay, that's a very destructive thing for your attachment. Losing your mother at that age would have made you go towards that avoidance state. It makes a ton of sense because you were hurt by her leaving you, right? She left you in a certain sense. And so even though it wasn't about you as a child, it would have felt like abandonment. And it would have been processed internally the same way as abandonment. So what's the point? The point here is that how would it affect you as a man? I think, you know, you've had, as you said yourself, you had artificially imposed integrative development because the loss of your mother forced you to focus more on becoming a stronger man. And traditionally, you're actually going to separate from your mother at 13. So this was a very traumatic way to do it. But what kind of pitfalls are you going to have? Well, you may have in a relationship, you may find yourself closed off because you're afraid of opening up to a woman as you get closer and closer. That could totally be something that occurs. And another thing that could occur is maybe some anger. I don't know if you're very often children get angry at parents who leave them even if they die. There's an anger at that sort of abandonment. So that could come into the picture too. But I have to tell you, man, that you are so aware of where you're at and how you got to this place and how it affected you, and the fact that it was 15 years ago and you've gone through it. I don't think that anything that's going to happen to you in a relationship is going to be a particular issue. I think that there'll be some bumps, it'll come up, but you'll be able to navigate it. And the reason I say this stuff is because it's really important to understand that everybody has trauma. Everybody goes through trauma in life. Everybody will go through trauma, some bigger than others, at more formative stages. But everybody goes through it. Okay? And it matters. What matters the most is your awareness of the trauma, because the trauma has the most power over you when it is unconscious. When you're aware of a tendency you have, even if you go into it, you can tack back quickly. When people do not see that they have an issue, if you didn't see that you had an issue, if you had pain around your mother leaving you at 13, then you would have issues in your romantic life. You'd be very avoidant. It sounds like you actually went through that already. So at this point, I think you're fine. I'm not saying that there won't be elements. Maybe you pull back a little bit in a romantic relationship, and then maybe you have a moment, maybe something happens with a girl where you really have a massive emotional breakdown, and where a lot of this stuff comes out, because in the construct of that, maybe in some way she feels like that. A lot of guys, like, she feels like your mother. A lot of guys will like disparage this, but I mean, look, don't be weak around women. Don't. I have to. How many times do I have to repeat myself with this stuff? You obviously don't want to be like the guy I talked about at the beginning of the YouTube video, right? Who's like crying and everything about his dinosaur. Okay, but fundamentally, it's about emotional regulation. And feeling like you can never be vulnerable or emotional with the woman you're with is just not true. I do not recommend you do it with the woman you're dating off the bat. There's a lot of context here, and it's a lot about the dynamic between you and the woman, and also your own relationship with your emotions. But if you're an emotionally closed off guy, you're going to view emotions as weakness. But if you're an integrated guy, you're not. You're not. And you're not going to care. Like people really don't get how much, like, I teared up during this YouTube video. Okay? At a various point. I can't remember what it was. That's how insignificant it is for me. Like, I tear up often. I'll cry a couple times a month because something emotional comes through. I saw something on Twitter the other day about this guy who wheeled his dog up to the top of a mountain before he had to get put down. He was dying. They always would walk up there together. And he wheeled him up on a wheelbarrow to the top of this mountain so the dog could have them tearing up now. It's emotional. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. Okay? It's okay to have emotions flow through you. It's okay to have that as a man. It's okay. It doesn't mean that you're weak. And a woman who's really going to be in your corner, who actually isn't fucked up herself, isn't going to process any emotional flow as an issue. What's relevant here is that you don't make her own it. It's not about her taking care of your emotions. It's not about that. But you may have some stuff come up as a result of your mother dying. And that's it. And this is it. Women love emotionally available and emotionally stable men. And that's the two things together. Being emotionally available, being able to express emotion, being able to feel it, have it go through you, but not letting it control you. That's an integrated man. The more open-hearted you are as a man, the more open-hearted women you'll get. Exactly right, Ben. Guys, I love you. Again, I will see you tonight. Tony's show, 9 p.m. Eastern